The novel is set in an imaginary future. The year is 1984, and most of the world has succumbed to never-ending war, omnipresent government surveillance, systematic oppression, and propaganda. Winston Smith is the central character. He is also a diligent and skillful rank-and-file worker and outer-party member of the ruling party in London, in the nation of Oceania. Everywhere Winston goes, including in his own home, the party watches him through telescreens. Everywhere he looks, he sees the face of the party's seemingly omniscient leader, a character known only as Big Brother. The party rules everything in Oceania, including the citizens' history and culture. Presently, the party is mandating the use of an artificial language called newspeak, which serves to suppress a political rebellion by eliminating all words related to rebellion. Simply, thinking rebellious thoughts is a crime called thought crime, and thought crimes are the worst crimes in the nation. At the beginning of the novel, Winston feels controlled, oppressed, and frustrated by the party, which does not allow expression of individuality, freedom of thought, or mating. Winston hates the party and disobeys the party by buying a diary to write down his thoughts, which is criminal and illegal. He has also become obsessed with O'Brien, a high-ranking party member whom Winston thinks is a secret member of a renowned underground group that is working to overthrow the party. Winston Smith works in the records department of the Ministry of Truth, where his job is to rewrite historical documents so they match the constantly changing current party line. This involves revising newspaper articles and doctoring photographs, mostly to remove unpersons, people who have fallen afoul of the party. He notices a co-worker, a beautiful dark-haired girl, staring at him, and worries that she is an informant who will turn him in for his thought crime. He is disturbed by the party's control of history. The party claims that Oceania has always been allied with Eastasia in a war against Eurasia. But Winston remembers a time when this was not true. The party also claims that Emmanuel Goldstein, the so-called leader of the Brotherhood, is the most dangerous man alive, but this does not make any sense to Winston. Winston spends his evenings wandering through the poorest neighborhoods in London, where the proletarians or proles live in the slums, virtually free of party surveillance. Winston receives a note from the dark-haired girl that says, "I love you." She reveals to him that her name is Julia, and they start a discreet romance, keeping an eye out for evidence of party monitoring. After a while, they're in a room atop the second-hand store in the Prole district, where Winston purchased his diary. As Winston's relationship with Julia grows more serious, his hatred for the party intensifies by leaps and bounds. Finally, he receives a message that O'Brien wants to see him. Winston had been hoping that O'Brien would reach out to him. Winston and Julia go to O'Brien's lavish apartment. Unlike Winston, O'Brien is a member of the powerful inner party, and that affords him a life of luxury that Winston can only dream of. O'Brien tells Julia and Winston that, like them, he hates the party, and says that he is working to destroy it as a member of the Brotherhood. He indoctrinates Winston and Julia into the Brotherhood and gives Winston a copy of Emmanuel Goldstein's book, the Manifesto of the Brotherhood. Winston reads the book, an amalgam of several forms of class-based 20th-century social theory, to Julia in the room above the store. Out of nowhere, soldiers rush in and arrest them. The owner of the store, Mr. Charrington, is identified as being a secret member of the Thought Police. Winston is forcefully torn away from Julia and taken to a place called the Ministry of Love. Winston discovers that O'Brien is also a party spy. He lied and said he was a member of the Brotherhood just to trick Winston into committing an open act of rebellion against the party. O'Brien devotes months to abusing and brainwashing Winston, who has a difficult time resisting. Eventually, O'Brien takes him to the dreaded Room 101, the last resort for anyone who opposes the party. In this scene, O'Brien warns Winston that he will be forced to confront his worst fear. Throughout the novel, Winston has had repeated nightmares about rats. O'Brien attaches a cage full of rats onto Winston's head and allows the rats to eat his face. Winston breaks down and begs O'Brien to put the rats on Julia, not to him. Winston's surrender from Julia is what O'Brien sought from Winston from the beginning. His spirit shattered, Winston is returned to the real world. He sees Julia, but he isn't in love with her anymore. He has accepted the party wholeheartedly. 1984 book analysis. 1984 allows the reader to experience Winston's dehumanization, frustration, and struggle to be free of oppression. In 1984, Winston sometimes experiences flashbacks of his career at the Ministry of Truth, his failed marriage, and his upbringing with his mother and sister. The flashbacks are triggered by events taking place in the present. In the novel's initial chapters, you immediately discover that Winston is living in a world where traditional rules don't exist. The reader is also introduced to Big Brother, the protagonist Winston Smith, and witnesses the world he lives in. Through details such as the smell of the building and the electricity that has been rationed in preparation for Hate Week, we learn that the book takes place in a repressive society with few creature comforts. The plot thickens when Winston begins to write his subversive thoughts in his diary. He begins to think of himself as already dead, implying he has lost the urge of self-preservation, and his life has no value to him, causing him to be ready to surrender it to a cause. The conflict between Winston's inherent humanity and the dehumanizing policies of the party is revealed when Winston's co-worker Julia hands Winston a slip of paper. Winston has suspected Julia is following him, and he views her with a mixture of desire and paranoia, so he expects the paper to reveal a warning or a coded threat from a party spy. Instead it says, "I love you," and Winston and Julia begin a relationship, sending Winston's desires on a collision course with party ideology and raising the stakes of how far Winston will go to maintain his autonomy. Julia acts as a contrast to Winston, as Orwell compares and contrasts their political philosophies and their styles of resistance. For example, Winston feels that the party must be resisted and overthrown, but Julia thinks it's better to evade its authority while pretending to acquiesce to it. Winston, frustrated, says to her that she's only a rebel from the waist down, which she interprets as a compliment. At the close of Book 2, the police barge in on Winston and Julia and arrest both of them, reversing the reader's perception of the characters in the novel and shifting the tone from temporarily optimistic to dark and depressing. The book indicated that Mr. Charrington, who Winston believed to be a friendly elderly man and potential ally, was a member of the Thought Police, and that the party had probably been watching Winston since he bought the diary. Winston and Julia are transported to the Ministry of Love, where prisoners are shown pleading not to be taken to room 101, building suspense about what could potentially happen in that room. Meanwhile, Winston discovers that O'Brien was a loyal member of the party from the beginning. By using psychological coercion and brutal torture, O'Brien shatters Winston's will until he cannot answer for certain whether 2 plus 2 makes 4 or 5. He concedes that 2 and 2 might sometimes make 5 in certain philosophical or theoretical concepts. In the end, he agrees that the answer to 2 plus 2 is exactly what the party tells him it is. The novel's climax comes when Winston's free will, represented by his love for Julia, is directly challenged by the party, and he must choose between Julia and Big Brother, between individuality and conformity. In Room 101, O'Brien demonstrates a medieval torture device, a cage full of rats, to be strapped to the prisoner's face, playing on Winston's fear of rats. In a panic, Winston gives up Julia, begging O'Brien to torture her instead of him, breaking the promise he swore never to break. "If they could make me stop loving you, that would be the real betrayal." In Room 101, the party succeeds in breaking Winston not just physically and mentally, but emotionally. In the battle between personal freedom and political repression, repression has won. In the novel's close, Winston is reincorporated back into the community as a loyal and faithful party member. He meets Julia again and sees that they both abandoned one another during the torture they received from the party, and he can't bear to be around her. In the novel's closing moments, which are shocking, Winston muses on how foolish he had been. He had won the battle over himself. He loved Big Brother.
Like, comment, subscribe.